3, 2, 1.
First for news and information in Coventry, this is iCov Radio.
Hello and welcome to the last iCov radio show of the year. I am Anupam Moretti.
And I'm Josh Stevens. We have an action-packed show today. We're talking about using T-Rexes to teach children and a potentially racist Christmas tradition. We'll also be talking about Hong Kong, surveillance and more. But first, here's the news with Dan.
Thank you, Josh. A Coventry man who was involved in a horrifying hit-and-run collision has now passed away this morning. At 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 29-year-old was trapped against a parked vehicle after a van shunted another car into him. Now we go to Jourdain to find out more.
The drivers of the van and car involved both fled the scene, leaving the victim lying on the road. Detective Sergeant Paul Hughes of West Midlands Police described the incident as a truly horrific incident. No arrests have been made so far.
Torture charges against a Coventry University lecturer have been dismissed at the Old Bailey in London. Agnes Reeves-Taylor was charged in 2017 over a string of offences, some involving children, during the civil war in Liberia. It was dismissed on a technicality. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has accused Prime Minister Boris Johnson of misleading people about his Brexit plan, stating that the Conservatives are hiding important information about the deal from the public.
It says there will be customs declarations and security checks between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. It's there, in black and white. It says there will be customs declarations, absolutely clearly.
However, the Tories and Cabinet Minister Michael Gove have suggested Labour's Brexit plan to be profoundly undemocratic.
Jeremy Corbyn is not only trying to have another Brexit referendum, but trying to rig the result of that referendum by giving the votes to people who, while they're cherished friends and neighbours, weren't given the vote in the last referendum and aren't voters in the general election.
Further plans have been submitted for a Coventry Station link road, linking the station to the Ring Road. The plans are estimated to cost £82 million, with the intention of completing it ahead of the upcoming City of Culture in 2021. Previous plans were rejected in October after a road safety audit, but the new submission addresses previous safety concerns. London Fire Brigade's commissioner is to step down 4 months early in the wake of criticism over the service's response to the Grenfell fire. Danny Cotton previously announced she was standing down from the London Fire Brigade in April 2020. She was facing calls to resign after a critical public inquiry report into the Grenfell Tower fire, which killed 72 people in June 2017. 2 British Spitfire pilots have returned from a 4-month journey around the world. Matt Jones from Exeter and Steve Brooks from Burford left on August the 5th and touched back down in England on December the 5th. The pair of pilots flew to 100 locations across 30 nations, carrying out a project called Silver Spitfire. Berkshire couple Sandeep and Reena Manda have won a battle with the Windsor and Maidenhead Council over racial discrimination. The couple, who both have an Indian heritage, were awarded £120,000 after they were told by adoption group Adopt Berkshire not to bother applying because of their racial background, though the council deny ever saying this. They were unable to register with the agency and were told that they would have better luck if they registered in India or Pakistan. The couple have since adopted a child from the United States. And finally, the BBC have announced their Christmas Day lineup, and it includes festive special editions of the BBC's biggest shows, including Strictly Come Dancing, Mrs Brown's Boys and Top of the Pops. Also on the lineup is the Queen's speech at 3 p.m. That's all for now. Back to you in the studio.
iCov Radio.
And now more on the Coventry University lecturer charged with war crimes. Our senior reporter Simon Pipe has more on the story. Simon, who is Agnes Reeves-Taylor?
Well, she's actually the ex-wife of Charles Taylor, who was the president of Liberia from 1997 until 2003. He's currently serving a life sentence in prison for war crimes in Sierra Leone. And she was charged in 2017 with a string of offences, some of them involving children during the civil war that happened in Liberia. She's now living in Dagenham in East London, and she's working as a university lecturer at the London campus of Coventry University. She was due to stand trial in January coming up after denying charges involving alleged torture. Up to 250,000 people are believed to have been killed during the civil conflict between 1989 and 2003. She was due to face trial for torture, conspiracy to torture relating to events that were alleged to have taken place in 1990 during that bloody civil war.
Is there anything more you can tell us about the charges she was facing?
Well, there were 8 allegations concerning events in 1990. They included conspiracy to commit torture by allegedly facilitating the rape of captive women by soldiers in Charles Taylor's forces. That's the National Patriotic Front of Liberia. It was further alleged that 3 of the torture allegations related to inflicting severe pain or suffering, and they included assaults on a boy who was only 13 years old. The Old Bailey had also heard one allegation of torture related to the wife of a pastor who had resisted being raped by one of Charles Taylor's commanders. Now, Mr. Justice Sweeney said the evidence of that allegation was that Miss Reeves Taylor ordered that the woman be tied up in a way that caused such pain that the tying up amounted to torture. The defendant then shot and killed the woman's 2 young children, saying, "If you refuse an order, this will happen." Now, of course, that is just an allegation, and now she's not going to stand trial, so we'll never actually know what happened, but she certainly denied having been involved in any of the crimes.
Do you have any idea why the case was dismissed?
Well, it was a technical appeal made to the judge, Mr. Justice Sweeney. Having considered it, he dismissed all charges. He ruled that the case against Taylor's former wife could no longer continue, said there was a lack of evidence that the Taylor regime actually had governmental control over the areas where Miss Taylor's alleged crimes happened. Well, this was a key test for convicting someone for torture in UK law for events that happened in another part of the world. So quite a significant case for legal reasons, quite apart from the appalling nature of what is alleged to have happened. And because of that technicality, she had to be released from remand in prison.
And do you have any idea what will happen to her job at Coventry University?
Been no word on that so far.
Well, thanks, Simon. And now on to international news. The Netherlands' long-running tradition of their Santa Claus equivalent Black Pete has come under severe scrutiny. Our reporter Tom Crack is here in the studio to tell us more about the Black Pete tradition.
Yes, so in Christmas in the Netherlands around this time of year, Santa Claus comes to town, but also a character known as Black Pete, who dons his face in black makeup, usually a white person as well. This is where the controversy lies, because obviously nowadays blacking up is seen as a very offensive issue. We're also going to speak to a studio guest very soon who's part of the Coventry Mummers. They used to do it as well, and in the UK in Shrewsbury in 2016, Morris dancers were blacking up as well. That recently got taken away. But for now, I'll take you to the Netherlands with Black Pete. With Christmas fast approaching, many find a way of getting into the festive spirit by dressing up. Whether it's be an elf, reindeer, or Santa Claus himself, it's sure to get the people in a great mood. However, a Dutch Christmas character that has recently divided opinion around the world is Black Pete. Known in the Netherlands as Zwarte Piet, the controversy surrounding this character is that Pete is commonly played by white Dutch citizens donning their faces with black makeup, red lipstick and black curly head wigs. Many Dutch citizens, such as Samir Kuzman from The Hague, believes Black Pete should become a thing of the past.
So for me it never really hit home until a few years ago when people started to protest about it. That's when I realized it's actually a pretty racist caricature. And I think it's the moment, just like the moment you look at it differently than normally, that's when you realize that it's actually not okay, especially if you talk to people about it. In my personal opinion, I don't think Black Pete is necessary. If you're really going to keep up the story about him being black because he dropped off the chimney, you can have some of these like little swipes. That's what they're trying to do right now. And what I like is that many major companies, many major channels decided to change the narrative a little bit. So he actually is a normal white or black or colored person with just like a few of the marks on his face.
On the flip side, Ludovic de Pont from Rotterdam spoke of how Black Pete's presence is rooted with tradition, not division.
It's a tradition, so I'd like to keep it that way. I do not think it's racist at all, because for the past 10, 20, 30 years, people have never put the, have referred to Black Pete as something racist. So I think it's less shocking for me, but I can understand that people consider it shockingly. But my opinion is that there are tons of traditions who can be interpreted in many different ways and be reformed as a racistic thing. So no, I don't think it's racist at all.
During the recent Black Pete parades, supporters for the character and those against it have clashed amongst one another.
Recently, actually in Scheveningen, which is near the beach at my place in The Hague, there has been a protest. There has been like a debate meeting of the people that are against Black Pete, the people that are pro Black Pete, so the ones that want to keep him. They heard about it and they advised everyone to go there, which was really bad because people actually got there very violently, throwing stones in the buildings, ruining cars. There were kids around. It was horrible. So both camps are quite violent.
With Black Pete being a part of the Netherlands Christmas tradition, it remains to be seen whether changes to the character will be made anytime soon. Thomas Crack, iCov Radio.
That was Tom Crack reporting on Black Pete, a Christmas tradition in the Netherlands that is now being seen as racist, but many are saying it's a harmless tradition. We now have Chris Rose with us, who is with the 7 champion Smalley dancers, who are a leading dance team on the UK dance scene.
Hello.
Hi Chris. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yes, very well, very well.
Could you just walk us through what Molly dancing is and the story behind its tradition?
Indeed. Molly dancing is a somewhat obscure form of Morris dancing. Morris dancing is more commonly thought of as dancers with bells, handkerchiefs and sticks. Molly dancing is a form of that originated in East Anglia, so just a part of the UK, and is a winter tradition and much more stompy with hobnailed boots, and farm workers used to do it in the winter when they weren't able to earn any money. And part of the tradition involved collecting food and money from the big houses and demanding that with threats.
Chris, one of the more controversial points of the whole tradition is the face that is painted black. Can you just tell us why do you paint your face black?
Yes, I was almost at that point, which is that when they were demanding money and food with threats, and the threat was to plough up the front lawns of these houses, you didn't want to be recognised by possibly your employers, judges, the landed gentry in the village. So it was a simple disguise so that you weren't recognised. It would typically have been burnt cork smeared all over the face, one would have thought, years ago.
Okay. So what made you decide to stop?
Well, we formed in 1977, and there was not a problem. There was a team based in London back in the 1980s that changed from black to blue because they felt they were getting a lot of adverse comments. We, dancing in more rural areas, and we're with a lot of other teams that were also doing the same, didn't find that for some time. But over the recent years, there were more questions being asked, and we came to realise that it was getting in the way of a performance, that we're having to explain ourselves. Generally, when we explained ourselves, it was accepted, but it was always that question, why are you doing that? And given that other aspects of the tradition our team had changed and developed and evolved, it seemed unnecessary to be hung up on one aspect of it.
Well, that was very insightful, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today, and you have a good day.
Okay, welcome. Thank you very much.
iCov Radio News.
As I'm sure many of you are already aware, protests in Hong Kong have been raging for months now regarding the dispute over extradition to mainland China.
The bill was met with outrage throughout Hong Kong, with a predominantly student-based protest group stepping up their initiative against the government. We have iCov reporter Jamie Garwood here in the studio to tell us more. Jamie, what can you tell us about these protests?
Thanks, guys. So unfortunately, the protests have turned more violent of late, with demonstrators and riot police alike clashing on the streets. And with the recent news that President Trump has shown support of the protesters, many believe the situation may escalate. I spoke to journalist and protester Fonka Pui on her experience of the protests in the flesh and her thoughts for the future.
I pay quite a lot of attention on this issue when it just started, because I know that because I worked as a reporter before June, so I've heard that this law amendment actually draw quite a lot of attention among the society, among the lawmakers. So when I think the protest started in June, where we have a demonstration that we have 1 million people join that, because I just want to report it. And then after that, in September, I involved it as a protester only, because I quit my job and I graduated from school. So now I just do it as a protester. Like sometimes I will join the protest, join the assembly. We always look at ourselves that Hong Kong people actually do not accept violence at all. Even though if you see someone who doing something wrong, you do not agree with them, the thing that you do is to call the police and then solve the problem in legally, peacefully in these ways. After the G20 meetings, and then the way that the government deal with the protest become more less soft, is in a harder way. Like they will run into when the protesters escape from the road, escape from the scene, and then they go to the shopping mall. The police will even chase the protesters into the mall and then try to arrest the people inside the mall, inside some indoor places. Actually, even for Hong Kong people, for reporters, we don't know how this issue will be resolved. Because we actually know that Beijing and our government will not easily give us universal suffrage, which is our final goal, as they are not willing to satisfy us with universal suffrage and reorganization of police force. As both sides, the government and the protesters are not willing to stop and to satisfy their side. So I don't think it will be resolved shortly. The main factor is Beijing and the U.S. government, like how the U.S. government deal with Beijing in terms of trade war, and also the issue in Hong Kong will affect us mostly. So I think the U.S. affect us most.
That was Jamie Garwood reporting. In other news, West Midlands Police could get direct access to around 100 cameras owned by the City Council under their planned City CCTV strategy. The proposal would extend the quantity of cameras the council can access via its control system, including those at Coventry University. Now, is this a breach of privacy, or is it a necessary procedure to combat crime in Coventry? iCov reporter Anna Pam was on the streets to find out what the public thought.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, especially with our van that's here at the moment. Obviously it protects everybody in the city, makes sure that no one's getting hurt or especially any damages, especially what happened the other night with the shooting. So I think the CCTV is a great option.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I know that people keep saying about privacy and all of these things, but safety is more important time, because you do worry about youngsters, and I've got grandchildren, and I think I don't like them to even go into town and places, so I think it's important that they do have it.
I think it's a fantastic idea with the police having regards to unlimited access to any CCTV footage in the city. For crime, I can't see it being a bad thing at all.
People are also of the opinion that given the recent surge in the crime in the city, technology must be used. to prevent it in whatever form necessary?
Okay, I think having access to the cameras and even having more cameras is a brilliant idea. I think in today's digital age, when we have to be really more efficient with how we police things, the cameras just gives police so much more access, and it's so much more efficient than just having policemen walking the streets.
iCov Radio.
Now here's Christian with all the latest sports.
Everton Football Club are searching for a new manager after sacking Marco Silva last night. They have been left in the relegation zone after a 5-2 Merseyside derby thrashing by Liverpool. Ex-manager David Moyes is the favourite to get the job.
It was time in the sense of the results just didn't seem to pick up for him. It looked as if there was big pressure on a few weeks ago. He seemed to just about get through it. And then I think it was it Norwich? I think they lost at home to. I think the huge pressure comes back on him again.
Sheffield United manager Chris Wilder criticised the match officials last night after another controversial incident involving video assistant referees. His players appeared to stop when an offside was signalled before Newcastle's John Joe Shelby scored Newcastle's second in a 2-0 victory over Sheffield. Wilder says that technology is killing the game.
The linesman sticks his flag up today. We were told at the start of the season that the linesman would keep his flag down. Yeah, I can criticise my players by not playing to the whistle, but when everybody in the ground, everybody, even John Joe, he didn't give me the impression that he was in and he was 1 versus 1 with Dean.
The wait is almost over for boxer Anthony Joshua as he attempts to win back the belts he lost to Andy Ruiz Jr. in June. The pair meet in Saudi Arabia tomorrow night in a rematch of the heavyweight world title fight which produced a shock in the summer. Joshua told Sky Sports News that he's putting together the final pieces of his plan.
About smart work now. Hard work's done, it's about the smart work now. So just kind of reminding myself what I've got to do, the motions, going through the process.
Chelsea will now be able to sign players in January. Their 2-window transfer ban was halved after an appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The Premier League club were punished by FIFA for breaching regulations regarding the transfers of young players. Rugby Union's European Champions Cup returns this weekend. Saracens are in action tomorrow at Munster in a game that could play a big part in determining Pool 4. Ireland legend Brian O'Driscoll thinks the Premiership club are a wounded beast after their huge domestic fine and points deduction for breaking salary cap rules.
This points deduction and financial deduction feels as though it's galvanised them all the more. They're a tight-knit squad, and imagine if they saved themselves relegation and managed to get to a European Cup final or managed to win it. That would be quite a story.
Thanks, Christian. A study from the University of London has found Birmingham and Afro-Caribbean accents face prejudice. This examines current attitudes to those accents with those shown by comparable surveys 15 years ago and 50 years ago.
Our reporter Yuki Kageyama spoke to a lecturer from Coventry University exploring accents in the West Midlands to find out why they may be discriminated against.
Recently, a study from Queen Mary University of London found that Birmingham and Afro-Caribbean accents face worse bias in the UK. The research examined the current attitude toward English accents, aiming to understand impacts of persons' accents towards work opportunities. The study also found that people older than 40 likely judge job candidates with regional working class accents as less employable, especially lawyers and recruiters in the legal profession were able to concentrate on the answer instead of the accents. I asked Ross Graham, a senior lecturer in English language.
My feeling is that there is a general negative perception of Birmingham Black Country. Widespread in the UK, a lot of studies have shown this, and not just Birmingham but also Scouse. Liverpool is also very much negatively evaluated as an accent. We have also got to realise is that it's not really the sound of the accent, it's the associations with a certain stereotype of people, because this is very much of a class-based society. Those accents, the Brummie and the Scouse or the Black Country accent, are associated with people who occupy lower class occupations.
UK is one of the English-speaking countries that has the highest levels of accent diversity. Accents can differentiate which part of the region people come from and which social class they are in. West Midlands in particular are associated with dialects such as Birmingham and Black Country. Of the two varieties, Black Country dialects are distinctive since it retains traditional dialects.
First of all, accent is referring to pronunciation of words. And of course, when we talk about words, we have to talk about words in sequence. But in actual dialect studies, and accent is a part of dialect, then we look at individual words. One of the things we need to remember as well is that in traditional dialects, the studies of those were mostly centred on rural areas. So you would have had studies of Shropshire, for example, Staffordshire, Warwickshire. In the past, all of these being much more rural than they are these days, would have had distinctive accents and even dialect words, most of which have now died out, unfortunately. So West Midlands these days is associated with the West Midlands conurbation, which is the huge conurbation comprising really going from Wolverhampton as far as Coventry.
He continues to say that accent won't change over time. I'm Yuki Kagiyama for iCov Radio.
First for news and information in Coventry, this is iCov Radio.
If you've been living in Coventry or studying at the university, then you'll probably have at least heard of the George Eliot building. But have you ever wondered about the woman behind the name? Now's the perfect time to find out, as the Herbert are hosting an exhibition all about her. Our reporter Scott Jones has more.
The Herbert is celebrating 200 years since the birth of Mary Ann Evans, better known as influential Victorian novelist George Eliot, with an exhibition featuring the original manuscript of her novel Middlemarch. The transcript is one of the first items to be loaned as part of the British Library's Treasures on Tour programme, which also features works from Leonardo da Vinci and Jane Austen. I spoke to curator Ali Wells about the exhibition, George Eliot as a novelist, and Eliot's connections to the heart of Coventry itself.
We wanted to celebrate her 200th birthday and really highlight to people not just about her connections with the city, about the time she lived here, but also how the city influenced her writing. Before she became a publisher, George Eliot was an editor for a newspaper, the Westminster Review, and she also wrote articles. She was sort of like looking down really on the sort of ladies writing for ladies, so the kind of thing we might think of today as being Mills and Boon, romantic literature. Almost all of her novels are set at least 20, 30 years in the past from when she was writing. And so part of that reason is why she chose a male name, because she didn't want to be judged in the same way as the women writers were judged. Her first connection is Coventry. She came to her last school here, which was the Miss Franklin School. And if you go to Greyfriars Green, you can see Lovett's estate agent, and that's the same building that she went to school in. She lived for most of her 20s in Coventry, and she made some fantastic friends that were free thinkers and radicals. And you can see some pictures of them in our display. We've got Cara Bray and Charles Bray. And they really encouraged her in her thoughts, in becoming a writer as well as inspiring some of the characters in her novels. So as well as seeing where she went to school, you can also walk past the house where she lived with her father. That's called Birdgrave, and that's on George Eliot Road, just off the Faisal Road. Unfortunately, you can't go inside, but I know they're planning to put a nice timeline on that highlights not just her time in the house, but the whole history of the house.
I also spoke with Coventry local Fraser to get his opinion on the importance of having George Eliot's work celebrated here.
Well, any manuscript is a one-off. In this computer age, you think typing, this is when things were handwritten, and if you lost that, you lost your life's work. So it's important to see like the preciousness of that, and what's more important than the written word, really. Throughout history, written word it's almost like teleportation between different times. So to have that as a one-off is really, really special.
The exhibition will be displayed until April 2020, but if you want to see the original manuscript, you've got to make sure to head down there before January 5th.
Now to end the show, we go back to Dan with the news bulletin, who has a breaking news for us.
Yes, breaking news has just come in here. Serial rapist Joseph McCann is facing a life sentence after he was found guilty at the Old Bailey today. Earlier this year, the 34-year-old man was the most wanted man in Britain, travelling the country abducting victims by knife point. The jury found McCann guilty of 37 charges of rape, sexual assault, kidnap and false imprisonment. A 3.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded at 11 p.m. in Somerset last night. The British Geological Survey has reported that some residents felt their houses rattle and their beds shaking. Senior US politicians have approved the next stage in the process of removing President Donald Trump from office. Trump has denied all allegations that he asked Ukraine to help corrupt next year's election. Jenna Ellis, Trump's legal advisor for the 2020 campaign, says there is no chance the president will leave the White House.
When that trial happens, there is absolutely no way that the Democrats can prove their case beyond any and all reasonable doubt or even clear and convincing evidence, and there's no way that this president is going to be removed.
Christmas jumpers could be adding to climate change due to the clothing containing mostly plastic. The environmental charity Hubbub forecasts around 12 million will be bought this year. Known as fast fashion, Diva Stilova owns a vintage shop in London who thinks the solution is to reuse old items of clothing.
It's just much easier to buy something secondhand or something upcycled, and this way you don't just produce new stuff to spend money on. Better for the planet.
That's all for the news. Thank you for listening to iCov Radio this year. Don't forget to follow us at iCov_media on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Josh Stevens.
And I'm Anupam Moretti, and we'll see you next time.
First for news and information in Coventry, this is iCov Radio.